Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. It all started on what should have been just another mundane Tuesday. I was sipping my morning coffee, scrolling through my phone, when an unfamiliar number flashed across the screen. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, probably just another spam call about my car's extended warranty, but something made me answer. "Hello, is this John Thompson?" a gruff voice asked. "Speaking," I replied, curious. "This is Mike from Sunset Realty. I'm calling about the plot of land you're selling on Oak Street. We've got a client interested in making an offer." I nearly choked on my coffee. "I'm sorry, what land?" "The vacant lot at 1234 Oak Street. You listed it for sale last week, right?" My mind raced. I did own that lot. It was a piece of property I'd inherited from my grandpa years ago, but I definitely hadn't put it up for sale. "There must be some mistake," I said. "I own that land, but I haven't listed it for sale." Mike sounded confused. "Are you sure? We've got the listing right here. It was posted by Karen Johnson from the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association." My blood ran cold. Karen Johnson. Of course it was Karen. She'd been a thorn in my side ever since I moved into the neighborhood 5 years ago. As the self-appointed queen bee of the HO, she seemed to make it her life's mission to make everyone else miserable. "I'm sorry, but there's definitely been a mix-up," I told Mike. "I never authorized anyone to sell that land, especially not Karen Johnson. Can you tell me more about this listing?" Mike gave me the details, and I jotted them down, my hand shaking with anger. Karen had somehow created a fake listing for my property, complete with photos and a description. She'd even set a price, way below market value I might add. "Thanks for letting me know," I said to Mike. "I'll get to the bottom of this." As soon as I hung up, I called my buddy Alex, who happened to be a lawyer. I gave him a quick rundown of the situation. "Holy crap, John," Alex said when I finished. "That's straight up fraud. Karen could be in serious trouble for this. What should I do?" I asked. "First things first, we need to gather evidence," Alex advised. "Can you get a copy of that listing? And check if it's been posted on other real estate sites too. We need to document everything." I spent the next few hours glued to my computer, taking screenshots of every fraudulent listing I could find. Karen had been busy. My land was up for grabs on at least 5 different websites. While I was doing this, my phone buzzed again. Another realtor, this time asking about scheduling a viewing. Then another. And another? It seemed Karen's rock-bottom price was attracting a lot of attention. By the end of the day, I had a folder full of evidence and a splitting headache. I called Alex back. "This is insane," I told him. "I've had calls from 7 different realtors today. Karen's trying to sell my land to multiple buyers." "That's even worse," Alex said grimly. "We're talking potential wire fraud now. Listen, John, we need to shut this down fast. I'll draft a cease and desist letter tonight. In the meantime, can you confront Karen? Record the conversation if you can. Just make sure you tell her you're recording." I agreed, even though the thought of facing Karen made my stomach churn. But I knew I had to stop this before it went any further. The next morning, I steeled myself and walked over to Karen's house. My palms were sweaty as I rang the doorbell. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing Karen in all her suburban glory, perfect makeup, designer yoga pants, and a smile that could curdle milk. "John," she exclaimed with fake enthusiasm. "What a surprise. What can I do for you?" I took a deep breath. "Karen, I need to talk to you about something important. Do you mind if I record our conversation?" Her smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. "Of course not. Come on in." I followed her into her immaculate living room, pulling out my phone and starting the voice recorder app. "So, Karen," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "I've been getting some strange calls lately. Realtors asking about buying my land on Oak Street, the land I inherited from my grandfather. They say you've listed it for sale. Can you explain that?" Karen's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, then understanding. But instead of looking guilty, she just smiled wider. "Oh, John," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "There's been a little misunderstanding. You see, as the HOA president, I have the authority to manage all properties in the neighborhood. Your lot has been sitting empty for years, and frankly, it's an eyesore. I'm simply acting in the best interest of the community by finding a buyer who will develop it properly." I stared at her, dumbfounded. Did she actually believe what she was saying? "Karen," I said slowly, "that's not how this works. At all. I own that land. You have absolutely no right to sell it or even list it for sale. What you're doing is illegal." Karen's smile didn't waver. "Now, John, don't be difficult. This is for the good of the neighborhood. Besides, you clearly don't have the means to develop the land yourself. It's better this way, trust me." I could feel my blood pressure rising. "Karen, I'm telling you right now to take down those listings immediately. If you don't, I'll be forced to take legal action." At this, Karen's smile finally faltered. "Legal action? Don't be ridiculous. I'm doing you a favor. Do you know how much property taxes you're paying on that useless plot?" "That's none of your business," I snapped. "What is your business is the fact that you're committing fraud. Multiple counts of fraud, actually. So I'll say it one more time. Take down those listings and stop trying to sell my property or I'm calling my lawyer." Karen's face hardened. "Fine," she spat. "If that's how you want to be, go go ahead. But don't come crying to me when your taxes go up or the city fines you for not maintaining that eyesore. This neighborhood deserves better than an empty lot collecting weeds and garbage. I'll take my chances, I said, standing up. Remember, Karen, take down those listings. Today? As I walked out, I could feel Karen's glare burning into my back. But I'd done it. I'd confronted her. Now I just had to hope she'd listen. But of course, things are never that simple when dealing with someone like Karen. The next day, I checked the real estate websites again. To my dismay, the listings were still up. Even worse, there was a new post on the neighborhood Facebook group. Exciting news! The empty lot on Oak Street is finally being sold. A local developer is interested in building a beautiful community center. This is a great opportunity for our neighborhood. Contact me for details. Karen Johnson, HOA President. I couldn't believe it. Not only had Karen not taken down the listings, but she was now actively trying to drum up more interest in my property. It was time to bring in the big guns. I called Alex immediately. She's still doing it, I told him, my voice shaking with anger. She's even posted about it on Facebook now. What do we do? Alex's voice was grim. All right, John. We tried to handle this quietly, but Karen's left us no choice. We're going to have to sue her. The word sue made my stomach drop. I'd never sued anyone before, and the thought of going to court was terrifying. But I knew I had to stand up for myself. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. What do we do first? First, we file a complaint with the court, Alex explained. We'll detail Karen's actions and the damages you've suffered. We'll also request an immediate injunction to stop her from continuing to list your property. Over the next few days, Alex and I worked together to prepare the lawsuit. We gathered all the evidence, screenshots of the listings, recordings of my conversations with realtors, and of course, my recorded confrontation with Karen. A week later, we filed the complaint. Karen was served with papers at her home, and let me tell you, the neighborhood gossip mill went into overdrive. I started getting texts and calls from neighbors asking what was going on. I tried to keep things vague, not wanting to stoop to Karen's level of airing dirty laundry in public. But Karen had no such qualms. The day after she was served, she made another post in the Facebook group. Attention neighbors, it saddens me to announce that our plans for a community center have been halted. John Thompson is suing me for trying to improve our neighborhood. He would rather keep that ugly empty lot than allow progress. Shame on you, John. The comments section exploded. Some people defended me, saying Karen had no right to sell someone else's property. Others sided with Karen, saying I was selfish for not wanting to help the community. It was a mess. As much as I wanted to respond and set the record straight, Alex advised me to stay quiet. Anything you say could potentially be used in court, he warned. Let's let the legal process handle this. The weeks leading up to the trial were some of the most stressful of my life. I couldn't walk down the street without feeling like everyone was staring at me. Some neighbors went out of their way to avoid me, while others cornered me to ask for details about the case. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. As I put on my best suit that morning, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely do up the buttons. This was it, the moment of truth. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways. As we waited outside the courtroom, I saw Karen arrive with her lawyer. She was dressed to the nines, looking like she was headed to a cocktail party rather than a trial. She shot me a smug look as she passed. When we were called in, I took a deep breath and followed Alex into the courtroom. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, peered at us over her glasses as we took our seats. All rise for the Honorable Judge Marilyn Patel, the bailiff announced. As we stood, I caught a glimpse of Karen. She looked confident, almost bored, as if this was all beneath her. That only made me more determined to see this through. The trial began with opening statements. Alex went first, laying out our case clearly and concisely. Your Honor, he began, we are here today because the defendant, Karen Johnson, has committed multiple acts of fraud against my client, John Thompson. Ms. Johnson, without any legal right or authority, listed Mr. Thompson's private property for sale. She misrepresented herself as having the authority to sell this land, deceived multiple real estate agents and potential buyers, and continued this fraudulent behavior even after being directly confronted by Mr. Thompson. We will prove that Ms. Johnson's actions were not only illegal but caused significant damages to my client. Karen's lawyer, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit, then gave his opening statement. He painted Karen as a devoted community leader who was only trying to improve the neighborhood. He claimed that as HOA president, she had the authority to manage properties in the interest of the community. Ms. Johnson's actions were not fraudulent, but rather a misunderstanding of the extent of her authority, he argued. She acted in good faith, believing she was doing what was best for the neighborhood. I had to bite my tongue to keep from scoffing out loud. Good faith? Karen knew exactly what she was doing. As the trial progressed, Alex called several witnesses. First were the real estate agents who had contacted me about the land. One by one, they testified that Karen had represented herself as having the authority to sell the property. She told me she was the HOA president and had full rights to sell the land, one agent said. She even provided documents that seemed to back up her claim. These documents turned out to be cleverly edited HO bylaws, with sections about property management twisted to make it seem like the HOA had more power than it actually did. Next, Alex called me to the stand. I was nervous, but Alex had prepared me well. I recounted how I'd inherited the land from my grandfather, my plans for it, and how I discovered Karen's scheme. "And how did Ms. Johnson react when you confronted her?" Alex asked. I took a deep breath. She acted like she had every right to sell my land. She said she was doing me a favor, that I couldn't afford to develop it myself. When I told her to stop, she got defensive and tried to guilt me about not doing what was best for the neighborhood. Karen's lawyer tried to trip me up during cross-examination, suggesting that I was the one being selfish by not allowing the land to be developed. But I stood my ground. "It's my property," I said firmly. "I have plans for it, and even if I didn't, that doesn't give anyone else the right to sell it without my permission." The real bombshell came when Alex called his final witness, Sarah, a former member of the HOA board who had recently moved out of the neighborhood. Sarah's testimony changed everything. She revealed that this wasn't the first time Karen had tried to sell property she didn't own. "Karen's been doing this for years," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. "She targets properties owned by people who don't live in the neighborhood, inherited lots, vacation homes, that sort of thing. She figures they won't notice if she tries to sell them. I confronted her about it once, and she threatened to make my life miserable if I told anyone." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. I looked over at Karen, who had gone pale. Her lawyer was frantically whispering to her. Judge Patel called for order, then turned to Karen's lawyer. "Counselor, in light of this testimony, does your client wish to change her plea?" After a hushed conversation with Karen, her lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence, but acknowledges that there may have been some misunderstandings in her actions." The judge's expression could have curdled milk. "I see," she said coldly. "Very well, let's proceed." Karen's defense was weak at best. She stuck to her story about believing she had the authority to sell the land, but under cross-examination from Alex, her story began to fall apart. "Ms. Johnson," Alex said, his voice sharp, "can you point to the exact section of the HOA bylaws that gives you the authority to sell private property without the owner's consent?" Karen fumbled with the documents in front of her. "Well, it's not explicitly stated, but as president, I have broad powers to act in the community's interest." "So that's a no," Alex interrupted. "You can't point to any actual authority because it doesn't exist. Isn't that right?" Karen's face flushed red. "I was just trying to help the community," she snapped. "That empty lot is an eyesore. Someone needed to do something about it." "And that someone had to be you?" Alex pressed. "Even though you had no legal right to do so?" Karen's composure finally cracked. "Oh please," she exclaimed. "Like anyone would miss that worthless piece of land. I was doing everyone a favor. If Mr. Thompson here had any sense, he'd be thanking me for finding a buyer." The courtroom went silent. Karen seemed to realize what she'd just admitted, and clapped a hand over her mouth. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Judge Patel's voice cut through the silence. "Well, I think we've heard enough. I'm prepared to render my decision." My heart was pounding as the judge began to speak. "This case is quite clear-cut," Judge Patel began, her voice stern. "Ms. Johnson, your actions were not only illegal but showed a blatant disregard for private property rights and the law. You abused your position as HOA president, deceived multiple parties, and continued your fraudulent behavior even after being confronted by the rightful property owner." She paused, looking directly at Karen, who seemed to shrink under her gaze. "Furthermore, the testimony we've heard suggests this isn't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of fraudulent behavior. This court takes such actions very seriously." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, this court finds in your favor. Ms. Johnson's actions have caused you significant distress and potential financial harm. Therefore, I am ordering Ms. Johnson to pay damages in the amount of $50,000. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The judge wasn't done though. "Additionally, Ms. Johnson is hereby removed from her position as HOA president, effective immediately. She is also barred from serving on any HOA board, or in any similar capacity for a period of 10 years. Karen let out a strangled gasp. Her carefully maintained image was crumbling before her eyes. "Finally," the judge continued, "I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. Ms. Johnson, your actions may well constitute wire fraud and other serious offenses." The judge's gavel came down with a final, decisive bang. "Court is adjourned." The courtroom erupted into a flurry of activity. I sat there, stunned, as Alex clapped me on the shoulder. "We did it, John," he said, grinning. "You stood up to her, and justice prevailed." As we stood to leave, I caught sight of Karen. She was slumped in her chair, her face ashen. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost? Outside the courthouse, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered. News travels fast in a small community, I guess. As Alex and I emerged, there was a smattering of applause. My neighbor Tom, who lived across the street from my empty lot, approached me. "John, I owe you an apology," he said, looking sheepish. "I believed Karen when she said you were being selfish. I should have known better." "It's okay, Tom," I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "Karen fooled a lot of people." Over the next few weeks, the full story came out. It turned out Karen had been running her land sale scam for years, targeting at least a dozen properties. The district attorney's office launched a full investigation, and Karen was facing multiple criminal charges. The HOA held an emergency meeting to elect a new president. To my surprise, several people nominated me. I respectfully declined. After all this, I had no desire to get involved in HOA politics, but I did volunteer to help revise the bylaws to prevent anything like this from happening again. As for my empty lot, well, I finally decided what to do with it. Inspired by all the talk of a community center, I decided to turn it into a small neighborhood park. Nothing fancy, just a green space with some benches and a little playground. I used part of the settlement money to get it started, and soon, neighbors were volunteering to help with the landscaping and upkeep. The day we officially opened the park, I stood back and watched kids playing on the swings, families picnicking on the grass, and neighbors chatting on the benches. It was everything I could have hoped for. Tom came up beside me, handing me a cold drink. "You know," he said, "Karen was right about one thing. This is much better than an empty lot." I laughed. "Yeah, but I think we did it the right way." As I looked around at my smiling neighbors, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It had been a long, stressful journey, but in the end, justice was served. The truth came out, and the community came together. And that empty lot that caused so much trouble, it became a symbol of what can happen when people stand up for what's right and work together. Sometimes, I drive by Karen's old house. She moved away shortly after the trial, unable to face her neighbors after everything that happened. The new owners are a lovely young couple who've already become active in the community. Life has a funny way of working out sometimes. As for me, well, I learned a lot through this whole ordeal. I learned the importance of standing up for yourself, even when it's scary. I learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even if it means going to court. But most importantly, I learned that one person's actions, whether good or bad, can have a ripple effect throughout an entire community. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone's trying to take advantage of you, remember my story. Don't let the Karens of the world push you around. Stand your ground, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to seek justice. You might be surprised at how many people will stand with you when the truth comes out. And who knows, you might just end up turning an empty lot into something beautiful. The next one is an entitled people story. I live in a very tenant-friendly area. We have rent control, and landlords are not allowed to do things like demand security deposits, enter the property without proper written notice, or include no pet clauses in leases, which renew automatically every month after a fixed term ends. For the last 11 years, my husband and I have had a great relationship with our landlord, Joe, fake name. We've been very lenient in regards to repairs, and Joe was very forgiving when my husband and I both lost our jobs at the same time in 2016, and fell a few months behind on rent. We are now ahead on rent, but Joe is still very behind in maintenance and repairs. We have a whole laundry list of issues my landlord is aware of, but hasn't done anything about for years. But we didn't care because he left us alone and has been overall very kind to us. A few years ago our landlord allowed us to start storing stuff in an old rundown shed in behind our rented portion of the yard. We never stored anything valuable out there because it's falling apart, and squirrels have been using it to cache walnuts from the numerous walnut trees in our yard. We had an old barbecue, lawnmower, ladders, and outside toys for my kids in there. Until recently, a few months ago, Joe shows up asking about the shed, wanting to know what we had stored out there. I told him just some old junk we'll probably throw out soon. He told us that the family next door has a mouse problem. We don't, and he wants us to clear out the shed to prevent issues, and because I want it to look nice around here. I said, okay, I'll talk to my husband and we'll get it cleared out whenever we get a chance. I have an infant at home, so I can't go out back and clean it out myself unless someone else is here to watch the baby. My husband had scheduled surgery, so he wasn't able to do any heavy lifting until after he recovered. Admittedly, cleaning out the old shed was not a high priority. Then Joe sent me a passive-aggressive text. I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow is garbage day, we know. Garbage pickup has always been on Monday, and we need to work together to keep the rental property nice for everyone to enjoy. I replied asking him if he had plans to fix the shed, to remove his scrap pickup truck, or to remove his open compost piles and heaps of mixed concrete and scrap metal he has out by the shed he wants us to clean. I also explained that my husband just had surgery, and that we weren't planning on cleaning the shed that day. Read it? He did not like that. He showed up unannounced, walked inside and proceeded to yell at us in front of our kids. He complained about his personal finances and the economy, inflation, property taxes, swore at us about our ducking crap, told us we can't use the shed anymore, and threatened to evict us because clearly you don't like living here, and I can get way more for this house than what you're paying now. We told him to leave, and that we will not communicate with him anymore unless in writing. He said fine, We'll do it all by the book from now on. And stormed out? The next day he put an eviction notice in our mailbox, complaining that we have excessive garbage and waste in outbuildings, that we refused to discuss this issue and corrective action with the landlord, and even adding that he felt it was unreasonable given the fact that he didn't evict us for late rent back in 2016. The notice gives us 7 days to correct the issues, or else my landlord can file for an eviction hearing. The next day, while I cleaned out everything belonging to us, sans the walnuts and squirrel poop, from the shed, my husband got busy contacting local bylaw and the Rental Housing Enforcement Agency, traffic cops for landlords. He was given information on how to file against the landlord for refusing to do repairs, illegal entry, loss of an amenity, the shed, and harassment. After a surprise inspection that happened last week, we were given a report that said Joe was given 90 days to fix the roof, plumbing, and weeping tile. He must demolish the shed and either erect a new shed or give us a rent reduction, because the shed was an assumed amenity. According to my neighbors with the mice issue, the provincial government is also involved now because apparently he filled in a pond without a permit. And now the fire department doesn't have a nearby water source in case of a fire. No hydrants out here. The city, by law enforcement, threatened to fine him for every day that he leaves his large pile of broken concrete and rebar out back. The cherry on top happened yesterday. He sent me a text to tell me that him and the plumber were going to be there within the hour. Normally, I'd be okay with short notice, despite the law saying he must provide 24-hour written notice. Not this time. I told him we need 24-hour notice. He showed up, knocked on the door, and when I reminded him that I won't speak to him in person anymore, he called the police saying that I was being hostile towards him and he doesn't feel safe coming here. He sat outside for 4 hours waiting for the police, who later called me instead of showing up. The officer who called said that Joe was told to stop harassing us and that he needs to provide 24 hours notice to enter the home. He wanted to make sure Joe left and gave proper notice, and asked me if I wanted an officer there tomorrow to keep the peace. If Joe doesn't do the repairs he's supposed to, we plan to take him to court and file for a rent reduction, and for a lien to be put on the property so he can't just sell it. We're just doing it by the book from now on, and just want it to look nice. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.